Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen, and happy Tuesday.
Good morning. Tuesday again.
Thank you. And congratulate you guys, or not congratulate, but happy Father's Day.
Oh yeah, belated little Dad's Day.
Little Dad's Day, yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys enjoy your daddy days?
I did.
I got a razor.
Be relaxed. I got some belts.
We got the most dad things ever. I got a tie.
Yeah.
Is that a nice way of your family just saying, "Hey, Mike"?
No, it was on my Amazon list. I put it on there.
Oh, okay, got it.
I don't wear belts. I wear, what do they call those? Athletic jogger pants. What do they call those?
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally like my uniform. But like other people talk about, like, oh, I go to work and I wear slacks and other stuff, and I'm like, nope. I go to work. I wear a hoodie and I wear joggers.
Go to work? You just mean like go turn on your computer, right?
Like walk downstairs and turn on computers. Yes, correct. So I have a weird job apparently.
Yeah.
Let's talk about today's topic. Today's topic is, our main topic is Everything is Still BI, an article by Ben. Is Ben Substack?
Stancil. No, it's Stancil.
Ben?
Substack is the
That's the blog, right? Ben Substack. That's his website, but the name is, I don't see the name at the top here.
His name is Ben Stancil.
There we go. Thanks. And it's a heater. It'll be interesting to see this one. So there's going to be some good talking points on this one. Tommy's I think Tommy, you found this one actually, right?
Yeah.
Okay. A good article to go through. I will put that in the chat here when we get going. But before we do that, let's do a quick little run around the news here. Anything newsworthy that has come out recently?
Hey, we have the June 2024 Power BI feature summary update. Not too many things down the docket in terms of major features. I would say probably the biggest ones are you can now download large semantic models. There's some visual calculations updates. But other than that, not a ton of major desktop features.
Yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about the buzz around visual calculations? Not hearing much anymore.
No, that's a good point. I'm here, like I'm seeing some articles. I gauge a lot of how a product's doing or one of the features are doing based on how many articles I'm seeing in my RSS feeds, and that's usually a pretty good gauge for me. How many people are writing about certain features? And right now, I saw a ton come out with visual calculations.
Yep.
Not seeing a lot of, oh, did you know you could do this case? And here's another scenario, and here's another scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Not seeing a ton.
Nope. I agree with you on that one. I was kind of, I think it's an interesting feature. I definitely think it's useful for when people need to leverage it inside visuals. The fact that it's kind of linked to a single visual and it's not a library of visual calculations you can bring to a model. Like I really do think there needs to be some kind of mechanism, just like you'd have a theme file, like, hey, here's a whole bunch of visual calculations you can use. You got to make it easy for people to get these things written and built. And there's only so many examples they have built in. Got to extend the feature. And I don't think they did that very well. And honestly, I don't think there's a lot of legs on this feature if they don't really kind of open it up to the community and make it easier for people to go get patterns of visual calculations and bring them into visuals.
Well, it's not just that. It's if you're going to put this in your report or put that in a visual, you got to be able to speak to it, both to your consumers. And if you're like, oh no, that kind of delta here is just there, we can't add it anywhere else, or you're going to have to recreate it per visual, which could lead it to inconsistencies. You know, that's a lot of risk. I think a professional is going to be putting on their report.
Agree. Yeah.
I kind of get it. I get your points, but at the same time, like, who's it aimed at?
First-time business users.
Is it though? Because it's still DAX. Like it's not. I think I'm going to push back right off the bat here. Maybe it's the extra coffee I've had today, because it's still the DAX language, and if I would argue, all the functions there are not more complicated than calculate, but they're on the same level in terms of what you have to do in order to create those measures. It's not a simple sum or divide.
That's my point, though. My point is like, this is where the patterns of like this is where I really wish it would do better job at explaining or more assistance required when you're building those visuals in the visual calculations. Yeah, it's fine. You can do that, but I need it to be like all those examples they give you. I need it to be a lot more examples, or I need to have a whole large list of examples because that's how I learn. I learn from
Right.
other people showing me patterns that I can follow, and I think that's when I want to extend it. So I'm just miffed on the idea that like, okay, fine, you fix some things around it,
Yeah.
okay, but I really wanted to have more ability to add your own functions
Right.
and have a library of them. And again, I think this is also the big miss that was with the quick calculations or quick measures. Quick measures also should have been driven by the community. Let the community define those things. That would have been way more impactful than just here's a list of 10, 15. That's all you get. You can't add any more.
Yeah. I'm curious, what do you think of Power BI Home and Desktop now that it's technically in our June, or not technically, but in the June update, it's generally available? Have you found that a better experience for you having Power BI Home in Desktop? Have you seen any benefits to it?
You're talking about the ability to like open files from Surface?
You know that new page you have to click through to create a report? Yeah, that one.
Yeah, the extra page.
I'm just making sure we're talking about the same thing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not loving it. I don't use it really. I mean, I always click like new report or open an existing one that I've already got going on. Don't really love that new. I do think that the saving, the save screen, just saving something as a file to my machine is painful now. They added more clicks there, and it's just I just want to save the file as a file on my desktop, and it's like 3 clicks now. You have to hit click save, and then you have to do this other thing, and then you do a save as, and then you have to go click another button to find the folders, and it doesn't let you. It's too aggressive to try and shove everything into like recent and OneDrive.
Well, it seems like they're trying to have that synergy between, hey, we understand that if you're going to be saving something in desktop, there's some people who are doing Git, and there's this integration if you can also edit your model in the service. So understanding if you're saving it locally, you may be already out of sync with everything in the service. So I think that's what they're trying to do with a lot of that integration. I've clicked on links on the open page. It's like, we're going to bring you to the service. I'm like, no, I'm in desktop because I want to edit something in desktop. I think that's what they're trying to do because, again, there are 3 areas right now I can modify a report, kind of 3 functions I can do it. I can do it in desktop normally. I can do it in the model in the web, or I can do it in Git. And each of those are different experiences. And again, could really lead to some out of sync. So I see where they're going with home, and I see what they're going to have all those areas. But right now, if I don't have one place to sync, then it makes it harder no matter what.
I'd agree with that one. I'm not a fan of that part. Give me less clicks, not more. And I feel like a lot of these things recently have just been more clicks to get to what I want to do. Anyways, moving on for that one. One thing I do want to point out, another note here, it's not actually this is kind of surprising to me. This maybe it's down here at the PBIR level. Maybe it's in there just very briefly. The developers, the new Power BI enhanced format, the PBIR format, has now been announced with an improvement, and a major improvement actually at the report side. The report side no longer is being built as a complex string saved object. It's all JSON, and everything is broken out by page. So you can go all the way down to a page and a visual level to identify all the objects inside the report, which this is the holy grail of like, man, this has been waited for forever. Everyone's always wanted this feature, pretty much since people were ripping apart PBIX files in the very beginning. It's fully here now. You have the ability to go all the way down to the visual type, and it's great. I think it's really good. It gives you diffs, all the things you would ever want with making your individual reports. So very pleased about that feature that came out. I will admit, I was playing around with it. It's very, very good. You definitely need to read the blog article and the full documentation on the PBIR format that was announced. There are some very strong limitations when you're using it. So there is some in the PBI format, they've enhanced it, but there's a lot of things it can't do inside the service. So if you are going to use that in the service. Today, the service is not currently up to par with this new PBIR format. Like you can't include it in a Power BI app. You can't download it as a PBI. What was that?
You can't use it in a Power BI app?
If you take the PBIR format and push it up, like so, if you go from desktop and publish it out, I think it packages the file and then puts it up in the service, so it's still a PBIX. But if you're using the PBIR format from like Git, how you're using the files, yeah, you can't do that. You can't download the file as a PBIX. You can't export to PBI the PowerPoint or PDF. It can't be included in a subscription. Can't be deployed with deployment pipelines. There's a lot of things that are restricting the PBI format, right? Well, I think they're gonna close those gaps. I mean, you can't have a PBI format. It's in preview, so they're just saying, hey, it's out early. The format's basically done. There's a lot of things that still don't work yet. So,
is it done? I mean, not being able to. Sorry, but this is our whole thing. We talked about like releasing features rapidly, but
yes,
with some of those limitations, like if I'm going through this, we used to deal with there. I remember there was one at desktop. It's like, hey, you can enable this new preview. However, you can't publish your report once you enable this feature. I forgot what preview that was back in the desktop days.
Yes,
and yeah, that's good to know. That's good to know that that's something to be aware of.
One other thing here that's also interesting here for just for other prosperity, there seems to be some hard limits inside the service as well, as far as when you bake a Power BI file. Now, I don't know if anyone's actually ever done this, but it says the PBIR has some normal size limitations. For example, your PBIR can only have 1,000 pages max per report.
Okay.
Could you imagine a 1,000 page report?
I'm gonna have to edit some of mine.
I'm gonna have to knock off a couple of pages here. It's 300 max visuals per page. A 5 megabyte max for each bookmark file, so you can only have 5 megabytes of bookmarks. That's a lot of bookmarks if you're just doing like JSON to write the bookmarks out there. 1 megabyte max for each file. I'm not sure exactly what that means. I guess maybe each file in the thing itself. 1,000 max resource package files. 300 megabytes max size for all resource package files, and a 20 megabyte max size for all report files. So I'm guessing there's just some hard limitations in the service that you can't get to. You may not be able to see those things because desktop just maybe forces you to say no, or it doesn't do it for you. So if you're adding a lot of things in there, there are distinct limitations on the report that you're actually building. So you have to build kind of efficiently. Yeah. I just thought that was interesting because you've never heard that before. You've never heard a PBIX file can't have more than 1,000 pages. I don't know who's doing that, but you can't do it.
So if you're on page 999, just be careful.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Anyways, I don't even know how you'd count that many pages in the report. I mean, that would be impossible.
Yeah.
Anyway, someone should try it to see if it actually does fail. Anyways, that's all I wanted to kind of note here about the new features for desktop. Kind of not a lot of features. It looks like Build and Fabricon kind of exhausted all new features now. We're probably just in bug fixing mode at this point. Any other news or topic items? All right.
Those are the big ones.
Let's move over to our main topic today then. Everything is still BI. Tommy, take it away. Give us a quick little summary of this article, and we'll jump in from there.
So I think this is more or less one of our more hot take kind of just overall on what is the industry of BI right now. And what Ben, I believe, goes through is he's going through the evolution of business intelligence tools and how new companies and products are attempting to innovate in this space and say, hey, we have something completely new. But often they end up doing the traditional kind of features. And it always goes back to what users are looking for. And no matter what the market trends are, trying to stay different, there's still customer expectations of what a BI tool can do. And eventually how we always lean and go back towards those main features where we say, hey, we have a new query ability. And when Tableau came out with things, what Power BI has been doing, and you see Mode, Quilk. I think there's one called SciSense too that tried to innovate, but eventually ended up looking very similar to all the rest of the tools out there.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a really big lesson to learn for us in general. And as we kind of kick off this conversation, there's a lot here about we're innovating constantly in this space. And I think more or less just the tools, but talk about like our teams and what we're trying to do in the BI space. Like, hey, we're not just building reports anymore. We're building insights, and we're able to do data science, and we're going to build all that for you. Eventually, we always go back to kind of the fundamentals, and I think there's some very kind of big reasons for that. But I'll pause there to see what are your guys' thoughts on the article.
One thing I'm finding here is, looking through the article and reading through it, he has a ton of references in this article, which I found very interesting. Most of the articles that we review are someone giving an opinion and kind of writing down a couple notes here. Every other sentence in here is a link to another article. You could spend an hour just kind of, going on rabbit trails and all these little links and references he's putting out in the beginning here, because he's using a lot of existing chatter talk, I guess, whatever, and to verify his points. And I would agree. I think a lot of what he's saying here is it's not, what is the real differentiator between different business intelligence tools? What's the difference going on here? And I think to his point, a lot of it's the same. It's not a lot of new innovation happening here. The only thing I can really say is you're kind of competing on price at this point. Who can do it better, faster, cheaper? And I think that's kind of why you're seeing the proliferation of Power BI. It's a better mousetrap for a lower price.
I don't know if I have the right word, but it reads almost satirical, right? Where he's got there's an undertone to this article, right? Like, oh, you have a everything's BI. You have this great new idea. And he walks through how you're going to take the next thing that's so unique from business intelligence. It seems like he's talking about the company Mode that he works for, or it almost sounds like he's part of the development of it. And it's like the whole thing kind of reads like you're going to do all these great things, and then you get all these like kind of a startup story, and then you just kind of land right back where all BI tools land, right? Which are like, there are a lot of needs. There are a lot of, customers or, prospects that start to force your vision off into different directions, right? And I think there are some interesting cautionary things for startups in that realm. Like, you're forced with, well, if you guys have ever worked for a startup, all of a sudden it becomes very, well, this customer wants this. Well, that's not what our tool does. Well, we're going to build it for them then, right? And then you become beholden to the customers in the development of your product heavily, right? As opposed to what I think he outlines well, which is a much harder path, which is you have a vision, you're going to stick to it. And for all intents and purposes, customers and others are going to conform to that new vision. I think cautionary tales within here where, I think he's even providing feedback where it's like, and the vast majority of those companies fail. Like, it's nice to say Amazon, and it's nice to say, SpaceX and all these things, but it's like, those are two companies out of how many companies that have started, right? So, like, yes, can it happen? Yes. Is it hard? Obviously.
So, to your point, let me quote probably, I think, going to be my favorite paragraph here, and I think some of you guys all appreciate. Some people might ask what Gartner Magic Quadrant you're in. Ridiculous, you'll say. The old categories. We're in something that we can't fit into the categories of yesteryear. You're going to cite your own Gartner research to prove your point.
Right. And we don't fit in the normal Gartner quadrants. We're so innovative. We're different than all that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really... we talked about Silicon Valley too. We did not get to season 2, but once we go to our next MVP summit and talk about season 2, the next season is talking about, well, what do you like? They're talking about the cloud stuff, and they're like, what do you want, a box? We can build a box. They're like, when can we get that box delivered? And everything just becomes about a completely new product that the customers want. And Seth, it's a good point about talking about the startups. I wonder if we could take this conversation, or I don't want to divert too much, but talking about the service side, because obviously we're not the one building products, right? I'm not competing with Microsoft on the business intelligence tool, or it's probably not the greatest idea. But me as a service is constantly trying to deliver something. I'm trying to go through on what are my services? What can I do from an effort point of view? That's much different than, and I think that at least changes, because I say, oh, well, we can do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, it eventually just becomes a report. I don't know. Do you guys see the kind of the equivalence there?
I'm not sure if I see exactly. I mean, I gotta be honest. My mind was going down more of the Silicon Valley route.
Repeat your question, Tommy.
Yeah. So obviously we're not products. We're not building business intelligence tools to compete with Microsoft. However, we're in the game or in the industry where it's our services. And I think we're always trying to deliver better services, and it's not always the same. If I was doing the same thing I was doing in 2015, I'm going to build this report. I don't think that'd be very successful. And I'm trying to look at other ways I can deliver, especially with the new features and tools available. However, I find myself or people still asking for some of the same services, the same features. Well, yeah, it's great that you could do X, Y, and Z. And I like that you're moving this direction. But can I just get a report? Can I just get a table?
Okay. Again, I don't really know. We'll pause it. I don't know where you're going with the question. Honestly, I don't see the question here.
In an ironic twist of fate, I think Seth gets it.
Oh wow!
So yes, we provide services within the constructs of the BI tools that we're using. I think you're just talking about the different personas of the solutions that we build within the context of those tools, right? So whether it's this tool he's talking about, which I would like to talk about further, or what we're providing, I think, yes, you just need to report kind of things. Yes, there are, we need a little bit more of a complex solution. Yes, we need some automation around ETL, whatever. I think how you find value within these, or the tool you build to solve these problems, has to take all of those things in mind, right? Like, are you building things in this service that can extend the value to the business all the time, right? Where, yeah, great, you need this report, or you're asking for this data dump. Why is that? Oh, okay, well, we're going to preliminarily start to collect and consume the data. You're going to do some ad hoc analysis, and then we've talked about this. It filters up, if there's a path, if there's somebody that's showing them the road to success, right? In terms of okay, great, I did my ad hoc analysis. What's next? Okay, great, I built my report. What's next? Okay, there's a lot of value here. How do we get this across the organization, right? Like the steps to, creating and maintaining, and then ultimately enhancing your enterprise level solutions, right? And I think what's interesting to me in this article is we look at Fabric, right, and all the offerings Microsoft is bringing out. The design here is interesting because it's bringing all that together, but in a very back end focused way. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I literally could not have said it better myself. Okay.
So what's very interesting to me, and I've said it multiple times in the previous podcasts, is I'm a Microsoft fanboy, obviously. I know Microsoft products extremely well. And Fabric was the thing that has consolidated everything. I've never seen anything else like it. What is interesting about stumbling across this article is he is talking about Mode, and I've never heard this tool. But it's Mode Analytics, which apparently reads very similar to an ecosystem that you bring all of these capabilities across the business intelligence stack together. And obviously it was compelling enough because ThoughtSpot bought them last year. And now they're part of that. Where I now know of a second tool where ad hoc analysis, self-serve reporting, interactive dashboards, advanced analytics, custom data apps, like a tool set is out there. And apparently, according to them, they're in half of the top 500 companies in the world. So I think there's a very unique perspective and story around whether it's building a product that's supposed to be revolutionary and completely different, and whether or not the current version of Mode is that, or he kind of makes it seem like it turned into something that is just another BI tool. Is a lot of where business intelligence is going, trying to rectify the gap that has always existed in the different areas of the business doing stuff? And I think the answer is yes. I mean, especially with where generative AI and all the other things are going, is to combine and bring these teams closer. Having said that, it's very interesting how I think, just reading quickly through, Mode, ThoughtSpot, et cetera, like how you attack that problem. Is it from the business side, or is it very tech heavy? And I feel like Fabric is very back end heavy.
It's getting, well, Power BI, I think, was not very back end heavy. No. And then all of a sudden Fabric shows up, and Fabric was only back end. There's no business side to anything in Fabric, honestly.
Right.
I mean, name me one thing in there that's front. None of it is. It's more back end heavy tools that are being simplified for back end users, and maybe some business users are going to be adventurous to go forward into that. I mean, I'm doing a streaming project right now, and streaming data, like, that was all about build. Build was streaming everything. It's all so easy to stream everything. We're building some solutions, and it's streaming things, but it's not as smooth as you would think. So it's working, but it's not quite there.
Yeah. And in some respects, like, a lot of that, I think, is probably enhancing the ad hoc analysis aspect of things, right? Because most of those folks know SQL or Python.
Yes.
Right. And now you've opened the doors to data, right? And then consolidating data. So maybe it's just my perception, right, of how, the documentation and how we've launched into the different aspects of Fabric. But I think what's interesting that in this article that kind of drives forward in this approach, whether it's Mode and ThoughtSpot or Fabric, is, are they staying true to their vision, or are they trying to serve so many customers? Because now you've opened this ecosystem where we can play together.
And so this is a huge point, Seth, because I kind of had an enlightening moment as you guys were conversing. Half my job, or half my time doing training with just Power BI, has been seeing reports and going, oh, that you're doing it wrong, where they had like a January, February, March table, and each of their things like, oh, this is terrible, but it worked for them from a user point of view. A lot of Power BI you could get away with without having the technical expertise, and did survive and thrive at organizations, not necessarily having the best semantic model, because to your point, a lot of it was user facing. A lot of it anyone can do, both from a heavy data developer to someone who's just getting started. Now we're getting to this, Fabric doesn't fit into a normal business intelligence category because it's data engineering. It's all these other features.
Well, Tommy has a moment.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I was just.
All right, we'll keep going.
Talk amongst yourselves.
I think what's funny to me, and well, not funny. There's a paragraph in the article that reads like this. In other words, no matter when a data product was created or what its first features were, it will inevitably collapse into the same singularity: database connectors, a code-based query editor, a code-free query builder, lots of charts, dashboards, self-serve.
Bingo. Nailed it. So really like that point. And then also, I think about halfway down the article, it talks about something like they were doing a pitch to some billionaire about their tool. and they're like, hey, we're doing a pitch, and here's our super fancy thing that we're building, and the billionaire basically said, you're just basically a BI tool, and all the BI tools now are using fast in-memory compute engines. That's what they're doing. It's fast in-memory compute. Everyone's doing that. You're not doing that, so you're going to need to you're just a BI tool. See ya. And basically blew them off. And then he says literally the next statement, and then 6 years later, we rebuilt the whole thing using an in-memory database, and now we rebranded it as modern BI.
Right.
I think there are certain trends that are just existing, and this is one of the reasons why I think I really like Fabric in general. Is they didn't really rebuild it. None of this is rocket science, honestly. If I look at the product of Fabric now, it's not new stuff. It's pipelines that were ADF. It's Spark that has been around in other tools forever. Notebooks are not new to Fabric. It's something else that exists in other places, in Synapse and other places. Databricks, other companies are doing this. They didn't invent the format of Delta that's been around for a while. They're now just using Delta in their tools. They didn't invent SQL. They're now just putting SQL serverless directly inside Fabric and letting you buy it. To me, the better mousetrap of Fabric is it's now a package deal. I don't have to go turn on individual services. You can go turn them on as needed, and they now pull from to me, the difference here is they all pull from a pile of compute units. There's a pile of common compute units that I'm purchasing each month, and in order for them to get to this Fabric thing, they needed to shift our minds away from a premium capacity as it was in virtual cores, but it needed to be this compute unit thing, because there's a lot more services other than just compute you need to bundle together to get this thing to work correctly.
Well, I think the argument on the other side, though, is the people. You may get the products to continually to evolve and rapidly evolve. Right now, what we've done with Fabric is basically taking everything on steroids, so to speak, to put it all in one space. But that doesn't mean the people have. And that's what lags behind usually. And again, to kind of the point of what people are looking for, the people are going to dictate, in a sense, the use, or can be a big part of what's actually going to be used. Is the expectation right now with Fabric that everyone's going to move over. And this has been our everlasting conversation or question is everyone moving to Fabric, or are we growing people in-house in Fabric to start using those products? You may have all those features, and that's great to have all the data engineering features and all the data science, but you still have the same people in Power BI right now who are, the data modelers, and you may have some data engineering, but you have a lot of the business users. Are we expecting them to pick up and now expedite their own skill, or are we expecting to bring everyone in? And I think that's the question that we'll have until we get to a more solidified place. For me, I'm looking at this, and it's great to have all the features there, but what are we doing about the people who have continued to work in Power BI that are the business users, that are just the Power BI people? I think we still need to have that environment for them on. It's still that BI tool of, I need to build reports and I need to build semantic models. Just because the products are there does not mean that everyone should be using them.
Yeah. Yes and no, right? I think getting use out of them versus things you build, maybe those are the same thing. I don't know. I think one of the challenges in that, though, and I'm trying to quickly kind of scroll through some things, because one of the challenges with all of these data teams working together is ensuring that you're supporting the efforts of those teams and or giving paths for an organization to set standards around, right? So even if we say, hey, this is the net new platform, business users, here's how you use it. You can create these objects, you can do your ad hoc analysis, you can do these things. This is the path for graduation, right? Which we still don't have. We've been talking about how do you even do that in the Power BI ecosystem. I think one of the challenges I have in here, and it's not front and center to me. How do you successfully manage data objects and data within this ecosystem? you have to have visibility, right? Like you have to have connectivity. You as the data engineers need to understand how objects are being used and where. You as a business user are looking for things. What can I go look for? Where's my data catalog, right? Like where are all the objects I have available to me that I should be using instead of my own spreadsheets? And I think in large part, like to me, that's purview, right? And we have kind of like an admin view of the purview hub, which kind of shows us some things that are interrelated. But I guess the question that's like a hot take is, does that need to be more front and center for Fabric to be successful across all these groups? In that, like, hey, it's very easy to traverse this ecosystem of here's where stuff is, here's what you should be using. Because if you think about even like metrics, right? Like these are the metrics in the organization. Here's what you want to use. Well, that could be simplified if there's a way in which I can traverse and get people to align and use the right artifacts across this ecosystem. It would definitely streamline what people are trying to find and access and what organizations are trying to build from the other side, right? Like if I'm going through all the effort to build a data set that is certified, I want publicly that easily discoverable for my organization so that they can use that, right? Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in the same problems that we have right now. Congratulations, you're building something in your workspace and nobody else knows it's there. So 10 other people are doing the same thing, albeit not as good as you guys, right? And I think for any system to work really well in this ecosystem where we still have all of these different groups with different needs and working in different parts of the tool, you got to sync around the data. And it's, I don't think I've seen a ton of stuff that tells us how to do that like well yet, right? We're just stitching it all together, but at the same time, like having, and maybe this is where Copilot comes in. I don't know. I need to find this data set. Okay, here it's certified. It's this workspace. You need to go ask for permissions or something like that. But I don't know, man. Give me the spider web.
Well, let's focus on that spreadsheet part because that makes me chuckle, because the user story now, or what it's been in the past, is, you know, we go and say, oh, you have the spreadsheet. Well, we can automate this. We can create a report. It's a very different conversation. Like, oh, yeah, the spreadsheet, we can medallion approach this. And that's a very different conversation for users, where because spreadsheets are not going away. Just because Fabric's here doesn't mean business users are going to stop using spreadsheets, and we're going to still have to go in to help improve their processes. I think where I'm going with that is, does that mean that we have to kind of stop the approach that we've done now with, hey, you have these spreadsheets, we're going to build a semantic model off this, we're going to really save you some time, where it's like, well, we have Fabric, so we're going to have to do this medallion approach. We're going to have to put this in a lake house. I don't know about that. I don't know where I lean on that question, but I think that's really kind of a prominent point right now. For we have all these features and tool sets, but you're still going to be dealing with spreadsheets. You're still going to be dealing with some very raw, unstructured data that's not necessarily maybe not necessarily meant for a medallion, but it's still coming for the business. And I think it's like, what's our take on that?
Interesting. There's a couple thoughts rolling around in my head. I've been sending you guys some messages in the chat about things that I'm seeing here as well. One of them is a very fiery comment from Marco Russo, basically talking about this whole in-memory tabular model. It's the best thing since sliced bread kind of deal. And I mean, it's been around for a long time. I mean, to be very clear, like tabular models is not something new. This is a very long-running technology, and it's been just getting refined and improved and faster, and it's getting awesome. I'll put the comment from Mark Russo. He must have read something somewhere about someone touting some other BI tool that had this incredible performance or whatever the thing was. But I think I agree with him. I think, you know, the tabular model, semantic model, everyone is copying that pattern right now. It is load things into memory, tabular model things, and then hyper fast access of data through that tabular model. Anyone else is doing things differently than that, it's just slower. And my experience has told me, like, if I'm connecting to a SQL server, if I'm connecting to other, like if it's not part of that tabular model, it's just slow compared to like the speed of the tabular model. It just can't do some of the impressive things that the tabular model can do at scale. Now, there's probably always edge cases for every little thing that's going on here, but I just found this comment interesting and very relevant to our topic as well. So I'll put the Marco Russo Twitter comment here. I don't know where that came from, but I thought that was very relevant in this conversation of like, look, nothing's new. It's the same thing that we've always seen. It's a tabular model.
I think we need a button, Mike, that has like a rewind, like an old school tape, like
yeah.
Because your comment was like 10 minutes ago in the conversation, very relevant for
really great.
I know. I'm just,
and then we can be like, back to Tommy's question.
I know.
We'll see what I can do with the editing of the pot. I
realize this comment is very. I know I'm kind of catching up here.
I was waiting to see if you were going to like weave that into.
No, I'm not.
Are we?
I just have this.
What are we doing about the data ecosystem mess?
Well, okay. I'm getting there because what I do is I write notes. I'm writing notes and teeing up my thoughts here. So like I'm catching. You guys talk so much, I have to catch up with my thoughts.
I have a thought from the intro.
So how about PBIR, right? So okay, that was one thought I had. I'm thinking about this whole article, and I'm thinking like this is very relevant with Marco Russo's thing. Okay, I'm going to catch up a bit more. All right, skip ahead in like 5 minutes now. All right, so now you're talking about where do we organize all this content? And the thing that comes to mind is I just saw a blog post from Databricks talking about they're now open sourcing the Unity catalog. So I don't really know what that means from a practical standpoint. I already use Databricks and I already like Unity catalog. So I'm very pleased to see them doing this. And I think the idea here is if I look at their, and you can go to look up more information around the Unity catalog, it's unitycatalog.io is the website where they're kind of promoting this new open source Unity catalog. And it's talking about these different catalog partners. It's talking about the different systems that you can play with. There's Delta ecosystem, the Iceberg ecosystem, and Hootie system. So those are basically the three kind of formats you would use to store these tables. And then it's talking about like, hey, this is a unified system for openness and cataloging, and here's all your data. It's all in one. I don't know how yet to leverage it all yet, but to your point, Seth, this is not like, to me here, it's not the revolutionary of like, this is a new BI tool. This is it's a tool that's taking the same stuff we've always had and making it a couple less clicks or more of a unifying experience or bringing so to me, the part is becoming, it's more consistent around all the information coming into the same place. And to your point, Seth, it's becoming more discoverable. And I think that's the key here is, what we've been doing traditionally in BI has been maybe more siloed in nature or has been focused solely on purely technical teams. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the existing stuff that we've been doing for years and make that easier for more people to access and potentially not necessarily move the data into different places, but more or less along the lines of what Unity Catalog's kind of doing. It's providing more quote unquote shortcuts to where the data already lives. Let's leave it where it is. Here's a better mousetrap to see all the artifacts we're talking about.
I could also make the complete opposite argument and lean right back into same singularity, right? Like Databricks is what they just release in preview. Like it's basically easy connections.
Yes, correct. That's what it is.
All the connectors that Power BI and ADF and Microsoft has invested lots of money in doing, right? Like it's a singularity thing. Everybody wants the easy button, so they're building it, or they bought a platform to do into that. I don't think they're doing anything innovative. I think in that regard, they're catching up or trying to, right? They're serving that part of the customer base that's like, yeah, but it's a lot easier over here to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be interesting to see how they extend as a platform, because right now, I mean, they're hard. It's data science, data engineering, right?
Yep.
ETL at some ad hoc, which is actually kind of funny. Some ad hoc analysis, but then they just spent a bunch in integrating with Power BI in their visualization matrix. So it's like making that ad hoc experience better, right?
Exactly.
So So I think there's a lot at play across, all of these companies to be competitive in a market. And I think some are obviously further ahead than others, because of the capabilities like Power BI, where you're deep in the business, right? Like your business people are getting value in a way that's easily consumable to them. And I think this even relates somewhat to the visual calculations point, which is, how do you bring business people along for the ride? Well, give them easy paths, simple to dos, the tutorial to follow that they can apply to their data and get value, and then they're hooked.
Well, the argument I'm going to make is that misleading then? Just because I can easily sign up for something or easily create a shortcut or easily create a new connection. I can have Unity catalog. I have all these shortcuts in my lake house. That doesn't mean it's easy to look at. If anything, I've just made it much more complicated if I don't come in with the right plan. You're making all of these things incredibly easy to sign up for and to create for a business user where they don't have the technical skills, right? But all of a sudden, you've now signed up for Unity catalog. You've now created all these shortcuts because you can. It takes no development skills. But if you are a business user with, just like we have with Power BI, I'm creating tables for every month. Now, times that by 5 in the Fabric ecosystem or with all these different tooling, all of a sudden my data is living everywhere and I didn't come in with a proper plan. It's so much easier. The barrier to entry is so much lower to get my data in all these different systems. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the right path. That doesn't mean we've created a best practice. The best practice, kind of going back to the article, is still kind of the same when it comes to BI.
I think you make a really good point. And the reason I think it's more relevant than ever before is I think that is potentially the thing that will kill these solutions, these products. And the reason is not because this rampant data proliferation or people using, data sets from all over the organization, like doing stuff that gives them insights, because that's what's happening in business already.
Yeah, it's already being done.
Already doing all this.
Just in Excel.
The problem is, so the opportunity is, hey, we can do more with this and make our ecosystems better. And I think that's where there's a lot of interest and opportunity, even in our realms and how we talk about it. However, the problem is you're giving them platforms that are going to cost the business exponentially more money. Right now, they live in their machines. They live in their own ecosystems.
On
a
compute that's
platforms that are
already
not
paid for compute
driven.
Yep.
Like it's all off in the side. And what you're offering is tool sets that now bring that into paying, and that's fine. But all of a sudden, when you turn this on and bam, everybody's throwing this stuff in, and Tommy, there is no plan.
Right.
And people are trying to figure out why the capacity's maxed out already. And we need another one. What is the business supposed to do? Just be like, well, this all worked before. Why is it costing me hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for business intelligence? Well, it's because we have all this new stuff that was in the business. Well, was it working before? Why did we put it all here? And that's where I think the sell of why we do all this has to come at some point, outside of unifying the stack and unifying business intelligence within an ecosystem. Because is there a lot of value there? Yes. Can we build things even faster than we did before? Yes. So you can scale, but you're also serving this other side of the business that isn't costing you infrastructure money, right? We can be diligent in how we go about building things, but you're opening this ecosystem to everybody. Right. And
to the button. Yeah.
Cautionary tale, man. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, because you're pulling all of that data, and if it's relevant, cool. But at the same time, you're looking at unskilled data people, right? I'm just going to load up my data. I'm going to do these things because this is what I need to do, and I'm going to, slam it out the door. Okay, like is this refreshing? Are you using it all the time? Are you like, what capacity are you using? Like, et cetera, et cetera.
Like there's a method to organize your data.
It brings it into a different realm. And I think, Tommy, that's why your point is really good, because garbage living in the environment is fine right now. You pull it into this ecosystem, and it may not be fine.
Mm-hmm. I like your point there, Seth. This sounds a lot like what I see on there's a higher. I'll make an analogy to what I think I see happening in the SQL Server realm as well, right? So in SQL servers on-prem, you buy the hardware, the compute's already paid for, you've sized the machine appropriately, someone made the business call and say, we're going to buy the hardware, it's done. You can then run that thing as hot as you want, much as compute as you need, all day long, boom, hit it up, run, go, all these things. It doesn't matter. You've already paid for the machine. You're only paying for the electricity at this point to keep that server on and running. So there's less of a monthly cost to run that piece of hardware. To your point, Seth, also, I'm thinking the same analogy fits for when you use Excel. Everyone's got compute on their computers. You've already invested the capital expense of everyone needs a computer already. We're going to have it. So everyone gets Excel.
An E5 license, which is everything, right?
Sure.
So
here's the everything button.
You're not paying per
here's all the software. You've already paid for the license of the E3 or whatever. You get Office. You can't run a business without giving people Word and Excel. It's like table stakes. So in those situations, you have all this sunk cost that we're now moving into this cloud ecosystem where it's not sunk costs, and the things you do more of actually need to be evaluated against the spectrum of, is it adding value and how much is it costing me? And this is what we've talked about a lot in the podcast. I think I've kind of made this point a lot. It's a balancing act of how much value am I getting from the information that this thing's providing to me against how much cost it is costing me. You may spend $1 million a year on Power BI. If that's still adding value to your business, that may be totally justifiable. That may be right in line with what you need. But if it doesn't continually add value at that level for your business, right? It's the pure, spend $1 million on BI, make $2 million in revenue, sales, or whatever other things that are happening. If that's the justification, yeah, all day long, I'll spend another $1 million to make 5. I'll spend $1 million to make 10. Right? That easily justifies itself when you have tools at your disposal that can do this. Now, something I'll kind of point out here as well. There's also some market. I'm going to call it market wins or maybe market movements that are also happening here, I think, as well. I think the proliferation of data itself is also increasing as well. So I do think organizations can't take this whole stance of it's going to be a set cost forever, because the volume of data that people like the software, the more things we get computerized in our business realms, the more data is going to be coming off of machines and automated and cameras and video and all. So just the general volume of data is going to increase. So something has to give here. You have to either have better, more efficient tools to do the work in, or you have to be more metered around what information is actually important to us and finding out. We're not going to store everything. I mean, at some point in time, you're going to have to just start throwing away data and be like, look, it's not valuable. We can't use it. It's not worth it to save for us. It's not worth the cost to keep it around. So,
yeah,
I think that's another thing.
That hard drive.
But like data itself is not the huge cost driver, right? Which is why it's cheap. Storage is cheap.
It's the compute.
Compute is expensive.
Yes.
And I think we typically always take it back into admin realms, right? Like if I can't have an answer for what is happening in an ecosystem, right? It's going to be challenging to justify the outcomes, right? Already business intelligence has a challenge to overcome, which is keeping track of the value that you're providing. Do we know that we're driving efficiencies? Yes. Of course we do. Does the business?
Maybe not.
Are you doing a good job explaining it, right? Are we
probably not? Yeah, that's a great point.
Are we driving the insights for all of this revenue that we're making? Like, how do I equate my work towards that, right? Like, so all of a sudden, it's like, can we, like, I think there just needs to be diligence around, okay, we're going to create some capacities and these 3 departments are going to share this for the time being. Right. And then we'll figure out how to do chargebacks and like who owns what, why do they need it? So essentially what you're trying to say is we have a unified platform. If you guys need business intelligence, it's Fabric, right? Here's your capacity. Here's what you do. But it takes diligence. Like this is where I don't think scenarios like Power BI are going to work well because of how fast things could explode, where it should, like the Wild West with Fabric is kind of scary to me, right? Like if you just open that up in a large organization, like how fast those usage charges would just be like, boom, like it's there. Yeah. Like I'm going to max out all these capacities, but whatever. I could just be fear mongering, but at the same time, like I think there is diligence in how you need to implement these things, and it is, like I said, much faster to spike capacities when using some of these other tools. If people don't know how to use them, or it's like, hey, I have access to this thing. I'm gonna query all of the tables. I'm gonna join them all together all at the same time for
full
all
load
data.
Everything all the time. Like I mean, this is
where
I think we have jobs.
The wrong query. I need this where filter.
Yeah.
Like 2 hours later. Right?
Yeah, kind of the heart of the matter, though. Too, we're talking about the fundamentals or fundamental BI, which changes slowly because it's the
fundamental to you.
Well, what fundamental to me? Well, what's fundamental?
Like, the problem exists in these users who have access to this ecosystem and don't know all of the things that you do.
That's very different than just saying I'm saying, what are we actually doing? Is it a means to an end, or are we just doing it because it's there available?
It's gotta be.
Exactly. Like just because, like, hey, look, we put all of our data in a lakehouse and a medallion approach. We're also spending 3 times more before. Did everything need to be in the medallion approach? Why are we spending 3 times more? Is that valuable to the business that my email campaign data is now in a medallion architecture when it wasn't before and we survived? There's a fundamentals to your point of delivering insights, accurate data. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's conforming to the new tooling. And fundamental BI changes slowly because the principles, it should change, but the principles are not going to change. And it's going to say, hey, what are our means to an end? What's the end goal? And what's our kind of like principled tooling? So I don't know, man. I think for me, I'm looking at all of this and it's like all the tooling and the services are great. But at the end of the day, whatever I'm going to do, if I'm going to have everything in a lake house or I'm going to keep everything in Power BI or have a mix of both, each of those need to have this very planned and kind of mapped approach towards, am I delivering the best value in this kind of situation?
I think one cautionary tale, I want to go back to your point, Seth, about cautionary tales. I know we're at the end here. I think the cautionary tale that I see coming up next is this whole message around real-time streaming and moving data all the time as it comes in, as it efficiently goes through all these things. I definitely think this is a pattern that happens in software development. It's this thing called microservice architectures. Data can always be moving around. You can always have things talking to each other. I do think it's a good idea, but I think the value needs to be very clearly evaluated against what is real-time data and really exploring the cost of what that real-time data really means in order to leverage real-time things as your data comes through. To me, that real-time information, every time I've done a project around real-time stuff, some compute is being turned on all the time and continually running. It doesn't seem to be cost-effective to always do that. I would rather have batching or micro batching experiences to, again, to your point, Seth, the question should always be asked to the business. If I give you data every 5 minutes, what decisions are you making in 5 minutes that will change the input of that data? If you can give me realistic answers, like I'm on a manufacturing line and I can turn off the line and save some, not have any bad products, that makes sense. There's a reason behind it. There's a rationale. But to say you're a marketing team and you need data every 5 minutes, are you really changing your marketing platform or your marketing messaging in 5 minutes in order to tweak that performance? I don't think your cycles of speed of you can even make decisions that fast to influence things is relevant. So I think it's a lot of these, to your point, Seth, it's going to be a lot of balancing these needs and making sure that we appropriately design systems, pipelines of data, reports of data that match the speed of the decision making that we're having in companies. So those things need to be paired together. All right.
Yeah. I would say final thought.
Yes. I was going to say let's do
final thought. From the article that resonates not only with tools, but I think people as well, is the biggest lesson, though, is that it's actually very easy to think different but it's very hard
Oh, I
to
highlighted
stay
that.
different.
It's different. Yeah, I highlighted that one.
And if I bring that full circle into like kind of what we do here, right, is how do you stay different? And it's joining conversations, consuming new thoughts and new ideas, new ways of analyzing what we do on a daily basis to bring new ideas to the table. And you stay different in that alignment when you keep engaging with different thoughts and ideas, and hopefully we help with that.
Good tie-in. Tommy, where else? Any other final thoughts for you?
I can't do better than that. That was perfect.
I want to agree. I literally went to we use this little raindrop.io app to save and store our articles. And in the app, it allows you highlight and then this is one of the items in the article I highlighted verbatim. You know, it's easy to think different, but it's hard to stay different. So anyways, I hope we've done, I mean, if I think about stuff that we've done, Seth, that's been different, we've been pretty different around how the theme generator works. We're pretty much carved out a niche inside this space around theme generating stuff. And I feel like that's another one of those things that we've thought differently, and we've kind of, for the last 6 years or so, stayed different in that space, and we see other people copying us. So maybe we're not different anymore. Maybe we're now becoming part of the mainstream.
With all three of us are radically different.
So. Yes, exactly. Awesome. With that, let's give it a wrap here. So thank you very much for listening to this article. I hope you enjoyed the article today around this one, around how everything is just normal BI. Don't worry, your new things you're building is just standard BI. Just go buy Microsoft's, Fabric. It's all you need. It's the only standard BI that it's just the same old thing. So that being said, thank you for your time. We appreciate you listening around this one. I hope this was some good thought-provoking notes here around BI in general and what you're doing in your organization. Maybe there's a couple cautionary tales that we gave you that you may want to look out in your business. With that, please share this article or this potentially this podcast to other people if you found this useful to you. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Well, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Do you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. Finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all Power BI Tips social media channels.
Excellent. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.